Hey, welcome back to another grading video for comics. This specific book I purchased off of Atomic Avenue. You might recognize it from my unboxing video. This is Avengers number 24. This is the second appearance of Ravonna Renslayer. And if you watch the Loki Disney Plus show, you'll know that Judge Renslayer was one of the main characters in the show, has ties to Kang the Conqueror, and wanted to treat myself to a Silver Age book to add to my personal collection, and took a chance on this book from Atomic Avenue. And what I want to do along with you is go ahead and remove it from the bag and board and start to possibly assign a grade to the book. All right, so the first thing, we definitely need to remove it very carefully from the bag and board. This was sent, it's a super, it's not Mylite, it's very clear, but it's super thin bag and board. So if anything were to bend this book, whatever bag and board is being used right now to protect the book, it's not really happening. It's this backer board's slightly thicker, but it is definitely not a full back. So I'm gonna use my hand to protect it from any tape pull and go ahead and slide the book all the way out. Now, one thing I noticed when I purchased the book and received it was that the book seemed very yellow, very tan, and it's certainly evident here in the light where it just doesn't have that really crisp white page feel. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. When we're grading books, we're looking at the first impression. And honestly, when I kind of take a book and I assess the book from a first impression perspective, I really don't deviate too much from it. I kind of look at a first impression and then I kind of stick to that range. So I would say the first impression here is that we are dealing with a mid-grade copy, maybe just slightly above mid. And I noticed this too, even in the bag, that with the top of the book, it has very few tears, chips, dents, the normal things that you would see in a Silver Age book that drags the book into that 3.0 to 5.0 range. So I was already thinking this has a shot at being, maybe a 6.5 or a 7.5, something like that. But as I examine the book and get a first impression, I think that there's some significant yellowing or discoloration there at the bottom. You'll see it's about an inch to an inch high all the way across. So that is not anything in the light or anything coming through the video. That's on the book. So if we look on the back as well, I'm looking for is there a deep water stain or something? And it doesn't look like it. The color's not too bad. It's not as yellow as I thought. There's certainly an issue there. I don't know what that is, if it can just be pulled off the book or if it's just almost like a pen mark or something like that. But for the most part, the book is in pretty good shape. It's held, nicely together. So again, my first impression is still above mid-grade. I'd say above average, above, what you would normally assign right smack down the middle as a 5.0. So this has the potential to get up into that sort of fine to very fine range. Now, before we get into the particulars of, scrutinizing parts of the book that could affect the grade, I want to give a quick look inside to check for any restoration. At first glance, as I look at it, more closely, the lines are very well defined. The colors kind of are what they are. I certainly don't know what that is on the bottom, but I don't believe that that has anything to do with restoration. There's definitely either some color rub or something happening right there in the center, just above Hawkeye there, and then above Scarlet Witch, the same. There's some discoloration. It's very minor. But I'm going to open this up, and what I always check for, and hey, look, there's our friend Kang. What I'm looking for is any bleed through on the cover. And I don't see any. Certainly see some of that, again, the tanning on the side, which does concern me, but I don't feel that it's restored. I'm going to flip through to the center cover. The pages actually inside really pop, which is nice. I'm really happy about that. So here's the centerfold, where we're looking at the staples. The staples look like the original staples. They seem to be resting nicely, really no rusting. So from a paper quality perspective, I don't want to jump and say these are white pages, but pretty clean. So if it's not white pages, it's off-white, or off-white to white, I should say. So again, just being on the conservative side, I would say it's an off-white to white pages here, but more discoloration right on the edge, and that's unfortunate. But the back cover seems to be in pretty good shape. I don't really see any markings here as well. So from a restoration perspective, I would be comfortable sending this into CGC and not fearing any green label. I don't see any pages cut or torn, or I'd have to count the pages to see if they're missing, but I don't really see any indication that the book was modified. You'll see these from time to time, these little sort of natural newspaper tears and defects, but I think that they leave that as a manufacturing issue and not something man-made. So we've given it kind of a first impression. As you're looking at this, you're kind of, coming up with your own assessment. Restoration check passed. Now I want to go through and assess the defects as we see them. So I've pointed out a couple of areas of discoloration on the cover. Now let's go ahead and look at the spine in more detail. So we've got some sort of impact, almost like corner splitting or spreading, that's happening just by Captain America. And then we see some color breaking issues there, right? So if we're going to start counting these, so there's already 4 to 5, one slight one just above that staple, but there's 4 to 5 right here in that corner box area, if I'm counting the line that's splitting off of that corner. And then as we move through and examine it a little bit more carefully, there's something right here, some sort of tear or paper issue right there in the center of the spine. So that's probably a fifth significant issue, I would say. As we move down the spine, though, the rest of it is not bad. I don't see... There's a slight hairline, one right there by my thumb, but not too bad. Maybe a slight, like a 5th and a half or 6th issue by that soldier right there. And the rest of the book looks really nice. It's down at the bottom. Again, that's my concern. That slight discoloration right on the front. There's a little bit of a fold here, just slightly lifting of that cover, but sharp otherwise. So it's kind of an interesting book, right? Because that corner, look at that corner, really nice. No issues, no chipping. And then let's look at the edge here. This definitely has some issues right here. It's almost like when it was read, that part of the front cover was pulled back and there's a slight tear there. So that's probably a 6th to 7th significant issue. Some minor wear right there in this corner by the Comics Code Authority label. A few pieces of the cover have been kind of pulled away here, very slight. And again, that top cover, very sharp all the way across. So I counted about 7 to 8 significant defects. There's something pressable right there on the cover. Right there. That's something that could be smoothed and pressed out, but because it's not, to count that as an 8th or 9th defect. So rounding up, we've got roughly 10 significant defects in terms of color breaking spine, things that would need to be pressed out or cleaned up. A little bit there on the V on the Avengers, right there. It appears to be almost like a page twist. The page somehow got twisted up and broke color right there. Still keeping it in roughly 10 issues altogether. I don't see anything on the back, though. There is that. I don't know what that is. Like I said, it's some sort of paper burn or mark there. I don't know if I could clean that up. The back cover, honestly, if I started with this, I'm putting the book somewhere in the 9.0, 9.2 range. That's how clean the back looks to me. What do you think? There's the back spine. It's really not a bad copy. To me, it's just the colors. The color on the front, certainly on the bottom, as I pointed out, a couple of either color, probably almost appears like color rub or dirt stains above the two characters' heads. And then in general, I think out of the bag, it doesn't look as yellow for some reason as it did before overall. It definitely looks, to have that sort of white page look and feel. It just doesn't pop the way that you would hope some of these Silver Age books would with colors. There's a lot of color on the cover, but for me, holding it, in my hands in person, it doesn't jump off the page, the colors anyway. So now we're just going to figure out what sort of grade we want to give this book. So I'm trying not to deviate too much from that original first impression where I was thinking fine to very fine. So from a numerical perspective, we're looking at the 6.0 to 8.0 range. However, the discoloration on the bottom and then sort of the additional 8 to 10 defects that we found when we examined the book, it would be hard for me to really say that this is an 8.5 or an 8. But I'm really leaning towards looking at it as a 7. So this is a fine, very fine 7.0 designation. And I feel like I would be really, really comfortable giving it a 7. And with maybe a little bit of extra care and cleanup, maybe having a professional presser and cleaner, see if we can clean up some of the issues on the cover, press out what's over right here, the color breaking issues there. And then I don't know if that bottom front can be addressed. It could be a sun stain. I'm not exactly sure what to do down here, but at least I see 2 to 4 defects on the book that could be improved to push it up into a 7.5. And then if CGC is feeling good on a particular day, to go ahead and give this an 8. But I would say as is, I'm comfortable giving this book a 7.0. Which to me, I think is great because I purchased the book at fair market value or just slightly under, expecting it to be a 6.0 fine copy. So the fact that I'm looking at it going, especially what is putting this in that 7.0 category for me is just the overall sharpness of the page. And if I'm looking at copies that are in that the very good fine or the fine minus, that 5 to 5.5, those will typically have sort of the shredding, the paper shredding that's going around on the edges. And maybe they present well, but they definitely have that going on. This book is very sharp from corner to corner. The only corner that has the issue is right up here in that corner box. Other than that, it looks like a nice, clean copy. With, again, the pages inside having a chance at white pages, but I feel like it's an off-white to white 7.0. So would you agree or disagree with this grade? What do you think? Leave your assessment in the comments below. Would love to get some feedback on what you think this book is in terms of grading. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.